April 24th. Call to order this meeting, and we will start this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation by Vice Chairman Oglesby.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Tonight we have in the audience Troop 43 from Dalewood Middle. If you will, please, gentlemen, would you come and help us lead the Pledge of Allegiance? If you stand, please. If you will, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Troop 43. I move the agenda, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Have a motion to approve the minutes? Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you very much. We do not have any special presentations this evening. Screen record. Before we get started, Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Due to the crowd that is here in the audience tonight, and I think most of them are here to hear one particular item, I'd like to move that we would move item 7H under planning up to the top of our agenda. Second.
All right, that's more of a consensus than a vote. I will assume that that means everybody's good with that. Are there anybody opposed to moving this item up? I didn't think so. All right, so Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and get started with item 7H under planning, please. Resolutions.
A resolution directing staff to develop conditional language and directing the city attorney's office on behalf of the city council to file a rezoning request consisting with the original request in case number 1980-179 and ordinance number 7721 with conditions for use as a restaurant and bar and or uses which currently exist on this property.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This is a planning item, so I will ask, is there opposition present? Just a moment. I just want, just by show of hands, opposition, and then
This is opposition to the resolution.
This is opposition to the resolution being presented. I was about to say, wow, I did not expect that. So let me ask the opposite. Are there people here in favor of this resolution? Well, there we go. All right, thank you very much. Mr. Bridger, would you mind giving us a quick presentation on this item, similar to what you did at 3 o'clock, please?
I'll give you the 3-minute version. Some of these folks are eager to. Again, this property is currently zoned C2 without conditions. This, as I indicated at the 3 o'clock agenda session, there's quite a lengthy history, particularly with this particular parcel. Originally 1971, there's a PUD for a residential development golf course community. In 1977, the clubhouse was taken out of the PUD and rezoned to R4 with the proposed use of clubhouse office for golf course. In 1977, actually 1980, I'm sorry, it was rezoned from R4 to C1, tourist service commercial zone, with the proposed use of a restaurant and a bar. It was approved without any conditions in 1980. I should note again that conditions weren't in place for the city until late 1979, right around 1980. Then in 2002, this same property that was zoned C1 without any conditions was a part of a citywide effort to consolidate some of the commercial zones, which over 600 properties which had a C1 or C6 designation were rezoned to C2. And so that property was rezoned to C2 without any conditions. There was a request about a month ago to pursue a planned unit development that featured apartments, single-family townhouses, and a rezoning request as part of that to rezone the property from C2 to R4. But the proposed use indicated in the application was to place apartments in the clubhouse and do some townhouses and condo rentals around the property. So that case was withdrawn at Planning Commission, at the March Planning Commission, and that's where we are today.
John, can you just run down what this item is specifically that we will be looking at, the resolution itself and what it does?
Yeah, the request is directing staff to develop conditions that would, and I think, as I understand it, Councilman Henderson had an amendment to this, but my understanding was basically directing staff to develop conditions for the C2 property that would, as the last I understood it, was to restore the same uses that were allowed under C1. That's my
Councilman
understanding.
Zhang.
If you'd like for me to read it.
Please.
I don't know if we need to read it now or when I get ready to make it.
Well, no, when you make that
Yeah.
one. Yeah, so let's go forward with this item. So, again, is there opposition to this resolution that is placing these conditions? If there is, you will have 9 minutes to address the body on this item.
The red light means it's on.
Yeah, red light means you're on.
All right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, members of the council, I'm Sam Elliott. I'm an attorney here in town with Gearheiser Peters, Elliott and Cannon, and I represent the landowner, Landman Norman, of this property. I have a great deal of admiration for my friend Mr. Hinton and the members of his office, and I hope they're going to tell you what I'm going to tell you right now, and that is imposing conditions on a rezoning that occurred 17 years ago is not only very highly irregular, but actually it's highly illegal. There's a statute that allows municipalities in Hamilton County to impose conditions on rezoning. And that statute particularly says, it's TCA 137201B, the conditions have to be designed to ameliorate injuries created by the rezoning to surrounding property interests or to municipal interests. That means that the conditions have to be imposed at the time of the rezoning. And what you're doing, or what is being proposed here, is the imposition of conditions 17 years after the fact. And that's not legal under Tennessee law. So on behalf of my client, I urge you to reject this resolution. Save yourself some time, save your staff some effort, because it's illegal. Thank you.
And members of the commission, my name's Tom Hazlett, a lawyer here in town also. I represent James Pratt and Pratt & Associates, who at least potentially may purchase this property. I haven't had a chance yet to look into the legality of what is being proposed. I appreciate Sam's comments a ton. Certainly that's something that we will look at if this goes forward. But what we have done in the last couple of days is try and understand the history of what's happened here, and it just looks to us like this is something that would be a pretty extraordinary overreach on the part of council, both in terms of how y'all historically have acted, and I think how the citizens of this city would expect you to act. And I think that becomes pretty evident if you just go back and look at the ordinances that are in place and that are relevant. If you go back, I would actually reach back as far as 1980, and I think you heard from Mr. Bridger, that's when this property was first rezoned from R4 to C1, to a commercial zone. And I've got a copy of the ordinance. I could pass out copies to y'all if you want it, but I'll read that. It says, be it ordained by the Board of Commissioners of the City of Chattanooga, Tennessee, the ordinance 6958 is amended, known as the zoning ordinance B, the same hereby is amended to rezone, and then it describes the property in question, from R4 to C1 commercial zone, period. The end. There's no conditions, and that's when the rezoning first happened from R4 to C1. I think there's two things to note in that ordinance. The property was rezoned, I think, in 2002 when you swept a bunch of C1 and C6 all into C2 because C1 and C6 went away. I think there's a couple things to note. I mean, one is the proposed ordinance would be the council acting on its own, just reaching out and targeting a parcel of property without anything that's been requested by the property owner or pending before you. And the second thing is asking you to basically go back and relook at what was decided in 1980, or if you want to go back to 2002 for when you swept it into C2, and say, well, you know what, we don't think that 38-year-old rezoning case actually was decided right. We think at this point we probably ought to slap some conditions on that we didn't think of doing 38 years ago. And mind you, at this point, this property has been used as a office for a golf course. It's been used as a retail shop for selling equipment and apparel. It's been used as general office space for the folks that currently own it. So it's had a whole bunch of uses that are commercial since then. if this ordinance that is proposed moves forward, I think we would at least have the following questions. One would be, why is this property, why are we being singled out for disparate treatment that we don't think anybody else in the city is being singled out for? What's the basis for doing that? Or is this council's intention on how it intends to operate going forward with other property owners? Because I think they would really like to know that. That is, namely, are you going to selectively on your own initiative, target properties, ask property owners to come down and hire lawyers to stand in front of you folks to try to make sure something bad doesn't happen, all with the intention of slapping conditions on that go back as far as 38 years that did not exist before? That we think this is a fairly extraordinary action on the part of council. We'll certainly look into the legality side of it, but at a gut level, this just does not seem like something that makes a lot of sense to us. And so we would respectfully request that you not approve this ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Haywood. That concludes the opposition, it looks like. Hey, Chris, can you make sure we got a timer? And then, in that case, I will open the floor to those that are in favor of this resolution moving forward. You will have 9 minutes total, no matter how many speakers. Please give us your name before you begin.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I'm Steve Hunt. My family and I have lived at 1027 Reeds Lake Road for about the past 10 years. And I have, I'm thankful for the opportunity to speak to you and the council about this subject. I am not an attorney. I do know Mr. Noblet and Mr. Hinton. I think they are very well qualified attorneys. And it is with their advice and counsel that Mr. Councilman Henderson has moved forward with this project. So I put my faith and trust in my councilman and my city attorneys. So thank you for letting us be here to speak to this. When we first saw the zoning signs go up on the Quarry Golf Course, that was our first indication that something was happening over there. And since then, we've met with Mr. Pratt at his request a couple of times, and he did a wonderful job at a community meeting and has filled us in on his plans. When we learned that he wanted to put rental apartments on the C2 zoning and then also, maybe not throughout the R1 property, but zone it to a PUD that would allow more rentals in there, 100% of our neighborhood was opposed to that. So over a weekend, we got 400 signatures on a petition that voiced our opposition to rental housing in the neighborhood. When Mr. Pratt withdrew it at the Planning Commission, what that means is the clubhouse portion is C2 and the surrounding area of the course is R1. The rest of the neighborhood to the north for hundreds of acres and miles of Mountain Creek Road is R1. There are 13 apartment complexes from Mountain Creek Road, from Reeds Lake Road to Signal Mountain Road, and we thought, frankly, enough is enough, and to rezone this to C1 as the original intent is why we are here tonight. We are totally in support of Council Henderson's resolution as proposed to be amended, conditioning on the C1 zoning and the current use. And the current owner, as I understand it, bought it under the C1 zoning. And I couldn't turn around to see, or I didn't turn around to see how many folks are here, but as I mentioned, we've got about 700 people signed a petition in opposition of this. I think, to the attorney's points, it would be highly unusual to do this on a individual basis and certainly without any homework. But the homework that's been done shows that this was a spot zoning done with a specific intent years and years ago. If you know the history of this, how the C2 spot zoning came into existence, it was really due to the actions of your predecessors with a specific purpose in mind, and that was confounded by a failing of our own zoning ordinances. How a C1 highway commercial zone came into existence specifically here in the first place, then morphed into C2 spot zoning specifically here by virtue of a general citywide housekeeping measure, We cannot find any documentation of public notice. We don't believe public notice was given back then. According to Director Bridger, 1977, the land was rezoned to residential PUD specifically to allow development and a 9-hole golf course. Then in 1980, this specific portion of that land was zoned C1 Highway Commercial Zone, again specifically, so a restaurant and a bar related to the golf course could serve alcohol. And according to the original application, which was RPA 80-179 in 1980, it was only zone C1 for the, quote, specific proposed use as a restaurant with bar, end quote, with the type of development listed on that application as a PUD. Again, very specific. The golf course failed, the PUD failed, and the clubhouse failed. So how could it be that a failed residential PUD development and a 9-hole golf course revert back to its R1, but yet the C1 that was there only in support of that PUD persist? The C1, right smack dab in the middle of R1 land, is persisted as C1. That's a failure of our zoning. Because there was no reversionary mechanism of that C1, then it was never intended to be in an ocean of R1 properties. It's highly different than most other areas of the city. It was not intended to be, C1 was not intended to be there. C2 is absolutely out of place, but C1 is the lesser of two evils. C2 allows rental housing in our single-family neighborhood. My neighbors and I, we beg you, we plead with you to do what's right, to help us and approve Councilman Henderson's resolution. We do indeed offer our collective thanks to the current owner, Mr. Scott Norman. He has cared for that land and kept it up and kept it in a fantastic condition. We have walked that property for a long time, and I really appreciate his efforts of doing that in support of our neighborhood. He spent his own time, effort, and money to do that. And we think that there is a good chance that we would like to do that with him, and if not with him, work with James Pratt. Not only do we support Mr. Henderson's resolution, but honestly, and I haven't asked my neighbors this, but I support Mr. Pratt and Pratt Development. I have known James Pratt for a long time, and he's a friend of mine. Mr. Pratt has stated that he intends to develop the rental units in the C2 zone and transform the clubhouse into rental apartments. My neighbors and I are just 100% opposed to rentals in our neighborhood. We feel that community is threatened with a high-density rental zone in an R1 neighborhood that would unquestionably alter the character of the entire neighborhood. The high density creates a host of other problems, as I'm sure you're aware, and we plead for your help. I'm not an attorney, so I've had to read these, so thank you for your patience. James Pratt requested that Rick Thompson, my neighbor, and I meet with him, and then later Chip Henderson and I met with him to seek a win-win solution for the development of the property that is the heart of our Mountain Creek neighborhood community. And each time, and now this evening, I have communicated that 100% of our neighbors are against rental housing on the site. We think enough is enough, and we hope that you will please support Councilman Henderson's resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. Mr. Thompson, you got 1.5 minutes.
I'll try to get it all in about that time. Thank you. My name is Rick Thompson. I live at 4128 Quarry View. That is directly across the street from the clubhouse. My previous address was Reed's Lake, and with the development occurred over there with single-family homes. Those addresses changed a couple years ago, so that's why it's not Reed's Lake anymore. But my wife and I started construction on our house in 1999, and it took a year to build it. We moved in January of the year 2000. So I've been living there for 18 years. And this zoning was supposed to have occurred in 2002. I was never aware that there was any zoning, any housekeeping, any widespread sweeping of the city, cleaning up some zoning issues. So if I didn't know, and I lived across the street, why, who else knew? I mean, I don't know. Was that something that was published? The city publish it? Did they send us a notice? How would we know at that time that we could go and object to that particular type of zoning, because it would have allowed multifamily rental units in our neighborhood? And as Steve said, we're 100% opposed to that. Mr. Pratt does a great job at what he does, but rental units are not what we need coming across Reed's Lake, encroaching into that R1 zone where there are thousands of homes over there. So we ask you, we plead with you to please support this resolution by Councilman Henderson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Darren Ledford. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Committee, so I'm kind of charged with watching over processes and actions that we take in regards to planning and zoning items. And I wanted to read a prepared statement, and this is thought that I would like for everybody to consider and take into consideration. One of the treasures in democracy and government that I cherish so much is the process by which way of formal procedures exchanges ideas and information. I believe these procedures are the building blocks of trust and cooperation and protect due process. The following statement arises from a broader perspective, rather than focusing solely on the merits of this particular case. I take the Planning and Zoning Committee chairmanship very seriously, and I take very seriously the overall effects of actions that we take in zoning matters, how they affect the city as a whole, and how they affect over time. I believe this role has been entrusted to me because I have proven to be fair-minded, sound in judgment when addressing problems with a mindset that solutions include the opportunity for participation of all parties. I think this engagement is vital in achieving transparency through honest deliberation. I feel it is my responsibility to ensure we openly discuss these items during committee and allow the opportunity for council participation. I believe in individual property rights. I believe in the United States and the Tennessee Constitution, of which I took an oath to uphold. I believe through the zoning process, best use practices have the chance to succeed. I do not believe it is our charge to initiate a process against a citizen's will. I also believe that government should not seek an opportunity to extend its authority over the people. I want to thank all of you for being here tonight, and I appreciate the emails that were sent. I have read every single one of them. I have responded to many phone calls. I understand your passion for wanting to preserve what you love. I truly do. I want a solution for you as much as you do. This situation demonstrates the adverse effects of spot zoning, an idea that this council recognizes and has been discussing for some time now. More community conversation is something I stress in my home district, and I know my colleagues feel the same way about theirs. I am very lucky to serve with very hardworking, compassionate, intelligent group of men and women who care deeply about their respective districts and for our city. And I know that we all feel communication is the key to problem solving. And I hope for that communication to continue, because this is serious business. This course of action will have ramifications and set a precedent for many future scenarios. Why is this? Because folks are watching to see this process unfold. The action sought here tonight will set into motion the possibility of hundreds of similar cases and requests to downzone properties, and we as a council could be asked in the future to be a tool for potential rights infringements. It is my understanding a community meeting took place, and I know that the case was withdrawn at the Planning Commission, and there is absolutely no plan in place right now. Nothing. So I simply ask, have we exhausted all options? Have we exhausted all conversation? Is this the end of the road? I still believe the better solution and a better precedent can be set by working together, not enforcing an individual property owner into submissive change. I'm not a lawyer. Heard that a lot tonight. But I think this action is of questionable constitutional violation, according to my research of the Tennessee Supreme Court case Phillips versus Montgomery County, which supports and upholds the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution. This action can place all Chattanoogans and taxpayers financially responsible for the inverse taking of land. I'll leave that for you to look up on your own. And I see the lawyers here tonight. Ask yourself if we are ready to accept that risk. And again, is there no room left for conversation? I applauded the ending of forced annexation a few years ago, and I asked my colleagues to seriously consider the path we set upon if we encourage forcing individual property owners to submit to our demands, even if it's just this one time. I encourage a solution through further conversation and not through the potential overreach of authority. I thank you for your time. I thank you for your attendance tonight, and I thank the council for the opportunity to speak. I yield.
Councilman Oglesby? Your light was on, sir. You good? Yeah. Councilwoman Coonrod?
Chair. I too, like Councilman Ledford, I'm thankful for the emails that you all sent. I responded back to all of them. But I just want to say, look around at your peers, that this is the perfect example of letting your voices be heard when there's something that's impacting you as an individual or as a community. This is what you do. You show up at council, you pack the room bottle, you still got people outside. So give yourselves a round of applause for that, because this is the action that needs to be taken on every level for change. So I commend Councilman Henderson. I don't agree with him often, but I commend him for just, wanting to step out there and say, listen, we got to do some things a little different now. So I appreciate it.
Done, Councilwoman? Good, thank you. Councilman Oglesby, back to you.
It's me every time. I don't know what.
Oh, they've got them mixed up still.
Oh, okay.
Let's say, hang on. Chip Daniels. Oh, they got these total. Oh, hey, Chris, we're still in public safety.
Mr. Chair, it won't be the last.
Hey, there we go. Look at that. Councilman Mitchell, now that I got you on my screen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Great words tonight from everyone. I do want to say a couple of things, but first I wanted John Bridger to come up here, and I got to ask him one question. I guess you knew that was going to happen.
Yes, sir.
You were around in 2002, so was I. And what kind of public notice did we give back then when we were doing our cleanups and things like that?
As I recall, of course, we have multiple properties. Like, I don't know, again, I was at Community Impact in 2002. So I wasn't, but my understanding of the practice back then was you normally try to post signs, but given the number of properties, over 200,
yeah,
they probably were not. Again, I can't say that for a fact, but I do know times when there's a zoning study done, sometimes they're not able to, but again, the state requirement is that you do a legal ad. I'm sure that was followed. Now, to your point, there probably wasn't a sign. I mean, I would not be surprised if there was not a sign on that property when it was done, given the scale, the number of properties that were being rezoned. Now, I could be wrong because I was not there, but I just know from my knowledge of past studies, like even when the form-based code study was done, as you know, we just kind of put signs on the perimeter because given the scale and scope, there's no way you could sign every property. So that's, again, I am making a judgment. I was not there, so I can't say factually what notification was done or not.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And for some other comments, I guess we started down this C road in 1980. We didn't even have this form of government in 1980. So what's changed? A lot. A lot's changed. And when someone's asking, how would the citizens want us to act? I don't know. Ask them all. They're right here. How would they want us to act? So when it comes to no notice on something, in other words, there's a mistake after mistake after mistake, when does the council have the right to try to correct a mistake, would be my question. I think that there's an opportunity here if we overreach ourselves tonight. Personally, what I see is a resolution, not an ordinance, directing our staff to come up with some terminology and some wording. So I don't see that as an overreach personally. I see giving a further opportunity for more communication between the two groups. And I've heard nothing but respect from the two groups speaking to each other tonight. So I'm not afraid at all that this conversation is going to stop by the action we might take this evening. So I would say, in weighing this thing, yes, private property rights, quiet enjoyment for other property owners with their private property rights. That's an argument that's been going on in this country since I can remember looking at it. So those are just some comments I wanted to make, and I think that it's a tough decision, but I have trust in these two groups that whatever we do tonight, something's going to happen that works itself out. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Is it, for some clarity for me, is it possible that I can get the attorney to read the TCA that he read just a second ago?
Sure.
Could you do that for me, sir? Okay. No, that was, thank you.
Is that good, Councilman?
Yes. That's good. I'm good.
You're good? Thank you, sir. Councilman Gilbert.
I'm just curious, how many people in this room received notice of a change from a C1 to a C2? Anybody? I think my opinion is that when the city did what they done back in the day, it was not fair to the community that they have something changed by them. I believe in people that lives in the R1 area will remain in R1 because that's their desire. I think that if we would have gave notice, we gave them opportunity to voice their opinion, but you can't voice your opinion if you have no notice at all. So that's my concern, that they was never gave notice that it was going to be changed to a C2, because I believe this room will be filled again then, or whatever room we had at that time, protesting that this is not correct, this, we do not want it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Burrs.
I have a question of clarification. The second attorney that spoke, I guess that's
Mr. Haywood?
you. I'm sorry. Is there a pending contract? I understand that there's something about a closing, if at all, at the end of the month. So is there a pending contract? Thank you. That's all I want to know.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could you, by a show of hands, all the Mountain Creek residents that are here tonight, raise your hand. Thank you. I appreciate your commitment to coming out, voicing your concerns tonight. Council, this is a very passionate, hardworking, self-sufficient people that really don't ask the government for a lot. I can attest to that. I get very few phone calls or emails from this group. But tonight, they're asking for your help in this vote. I know this is a hard vote for this council. I realize that. And believe me, I've wrestled with this myself. I haven't approached this lightly, but with a great deal of agonizing thought and research. While this could be seen as government overreach, I've come to the conclusion that it's really government protecting these people. I didn't draft this resolution in a vacuum. I consulted with our attorney's office when I drafted this resolution. It was stated by one of our council members that rezoning should only be done at the request of the owner. I would suggest that the owner did not request C2. So let's take it back to C1. I've weighed this carefully, not in the balance of what is popular, but in the balance of what would be right. And I guess I ask this council tonight, what would your vote be if these were your constituents sitting out in the audience tonight? And with that, I move approval of Resolution 7H.
Second.
All right.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Roll call.
Wait a minute. I'm going to make an amendment, and I should have made that clear. I think I did make this clear. I'm going to make an amendment. I'd like to amend this resolution to the current, or to this language. Amend by striking current language and adding this statement, directing staff to develop conditional language and directing the city attorney's office on behalf of the city council to file a zoning application requesting conditions that include office use and any uses consistent with the former C1 zoning uses to be placed on this tract of land located at 1001 Reeds Lake Road, described in case number 1980-179 and ordinance number 7721, and that's in the form of a motion.
All right, I have a motion and a second on the amendment. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no.
So moved.
We have one abstention on the amendment, Madam Clerk.
Mr. Chairman, I have to move this resolution as amended.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move the resolution as amended. I also have a roll call request. Madam Clerk, please begin with Councilwoman Burrs.
Burrs. Byrd.
Yes.
Coonrod. Gilbert.
Yes.
Henderson.
Yes.
Ledford.
Abstain, Ferguson.
Could you repeat that?
Abstain.
Abstain, Ferguson.
Mitchell.
Yes.
Oglesby.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes. So that is, Madam Clerk,
Yes, the 7 yes.
7 yes. The resolution passes as amended. Thank you, Councilman. Ladies and gentlemen that are here for this item, let me also say thank you very much for coming out. Regardless of what the results may have been, It is always great to see people come out and take part in this process. Some of you are here every week. Some of you we've never seen before. So welcome this evening, and thank you again for being here and voicing your opinions. I've also received a lot of phone calls and emails. I've been able to respond to some, not all of them yet. I will get to them all eventually, for sure, and I will do my best. So again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. We are going to move on with our agenda as scheduled, but we'd be more than happy to give you a few seconds to leave, as I don't think you want to stay for the rest of this meeting.
How many people in here feel this will cause damage to their community?
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Please smile, because I see you in court. Say what now? They won't do it though. Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, wait. No, we 6 people left.
They won't do that though.
Oh, I thought you went around, because staff's in the conference room now.
I think
Right.
Yeah,
Now
that's
there's
right.
people here. They said, he crazy as hell and retarded ass. Say what? I love it.
All right. Still going. Glad we have a lot of public parking downtown.
I don't know.
All right, Madam Clerk, let's go ahead and get moving, please. Let's back up to ordinances on final reading, starting out with 5A, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to rezone property located in the 500 block of May Street, more particularly described herein from R1 residential zone to ERD2 residential detached zone upon staff recommendations.
Councilman Henderson.
Mr. Bridger, I just noticed something about this. We placed conditions on this on first reading last week,
That is correct.
and I don't see as conditioned or as amended on this version.
It should be, yeah, because you had like an alternative. I know exactly what you're talking about. Let me pull it up.
Yeah, this one still says staff version,
This
John.
says staff version, which would not be as amended.
That's correct.
Should I just amend this version then?
No, no, because it'll take it back to first. We need to make sure that we have the right one on here that passed first reading.
I'm going to defer to our city attorney. on that.
To ensure that this is consistent, would you defer for 1 week, and then we'll come back and get it done next week?
Is the,
Or-
is the,
or-
hang on,
or-
is the applicant here?
No, I don't think he's here. I don't think he thought there was going to be a problem, and I apologize. I just noticed that there's no,
Right.
no conditions on here. If we could move it to the back of the agenda and get this worked out, because we've already deferred it, and I'd hate to defer it again. When we know what the conditions are, it's condition 2,
Sure.
single-family detached.
Yeah, sure. Put it to the back of the agenda. We'll
Okay.
handle it.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we back this up to the back of the agenda.
That's fine. Madam Clerk, we're just going to come back to this item. Please make sure we do not miss it. Meanwhile, we're going to move on to B, please.
An ordinance to
John,
amend
you better hang
Chattanooga-
around.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to rezone property located at 3807 17th Avenue, more particularly described herein from R1 residential zone to R2 residential zone.
All right, is the applicant present? Any opposition present? Councilman Oglesby.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you very much. C, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to rezone property located at 906 and 912 East 14th Street, more particularly described herein from R3 residential zone to RTZ residential townhouse zero lot line zone.
Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. Move to approve.
Councilman Byrd.
And I would like to move to amend as well,
And the amendment is,
that we only allow to be built on this land with this zoning, single-family detached.
okay, so you would like to amend the current ordinance to allow single-family detached?
Detached, yes, sir.
Okay.
Second on the amendment.
Yeah, we have a motion and a second on the amendment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay.
Then I'd like to move to amend as amended. I'd like to move to approve as amended, yes, sir.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed is nay. Madam Clerk, that takes us back to first reading.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, Madam Clerk, let's move on to 6A, please.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, Article 16, downtown Chattanooga form-based code relative to recommended improvements based on a one-year review.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hopefully, everyone's had an opportunity to study the revisions that Councilman Mitchell and I submitted to the one-year review recommended improvements, and I would like to move for the alternate version co-sponsored by Councilman Henderson and Mitchell.
Councilman Mitchell. Second. All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you, gentlemen. B, please, Madam Clerk.
An ordinance closing and abandoning an unopened alley off the 400 block of Ziegler Street as detailed on the attached map, subject to certain conditions.
Councilman Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I received an email from the applicant requesting that this item be withdrawn, so I move that we withdraw.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. This item has been withdrawn. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, let's move on to 7A.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute the First Amendment to Property Exchange Agreement in substantially the form attached with Highland Park Commons, Inc., and authorizing payment in the amount of $50,000 to Highland Park Commons, Inc.
Councilwoman Coonrod, followed by Councilman Byrd. All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. B, please.
A resolution authorizing the mayor to execute an agreement with Gail M. Goldman Associates in substantially the form attached for public art consulting services and the creation of a public art master plan in the amount of $60,000.
Councilman Mitchell.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you. C, please.
A resolution to amend resolution number 29148 to enter into a primary contract with P&D Construction and a secondary contract with Tower Construction to increase the amount for demolition services by $100,000 for an amount not to exceed $510,000.
What's the pleasure? Move to approve. Second. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. D, please.
A resolution authorizing the city treasurer to renew purchase order number 526211 to Harris Computer Systems for a one-year renewal period for the purpose of billing and collections of property and sewer utility services in the amount of $131,416.40.
Councilwoman Burrs. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. E, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to execute an agreement with PNC Equipment Finance LLC for the financing of golf carts approved on blanket order 547383 for a total of payment in the amount of $377,208 for a 5-year period.
Councilwoman Burrs. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you. Madam Clerk, F, please.
A resolution amending resolution number 28367, Employee Information Guide, to replace the section Drug and Alcohol Testing Policy for Commercial Motor Vehicle Drivers, CDL, and amend the section on Drug and Alcohol Testing Policy for Non-Commercial Motor Vehicle Drivers, non-CDL, to follow the federal motor carrier regulations governing drugs and alcohol.
I've got Councilman Gilbert.
Before I vote for this, can I have HR to come up?
Absolutely.
HR.
Anybody? There we go. Okay. I saw Tana look in that direction. I wasn't quite sure. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Is it possible that you can explain that we already currently have on the federal guidelines and the changes that we're making? Can you briefly tell us what you told me earlier?
I'm sorry, the last part.
Can you explain to us that we currently under federal guidelines currently, and the only thing we're doing is changing a few wording on the new guidelines?
That is correct. So the changes that are being proposed basically meet the federal guidelines. So in essence, what we have done is taken the federal guidelines and pretty much replaced the previous language with the new revised revisions from the federal government as of January 2018. And the only differences that need to stand out for this purpose is that the definitions around the 5-panel drug testing in terms of breath analysis and the type of equipment is being used, that the definition for that has been expanded upon. In addition to that, the federal government has changed to include the use of opioids instead of opiates in the language. So that expands the level of drugs that they will test for. Those are essentially the only two major changes that affect us.
And also that individuals that work on the handbook have knowledge of this too, for us unions and things of that nature, correct?
Yes, they would. The committee, I presume the committee that you're referencing from the past that has been working on the handbook, yes, they are aware of the federal guidelines. And so nothing else has changed, but they are aware that we adopt and go by anything that the federal government has laid out regarding drug and alcohol testing.
I move to approve.
All right. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman. G, please.
A resolution authorizing the Office of the City Attorney to engage advice law firm for legal services related to the 2014 delinquent city taxpayer litigation.
Councilwoman Burrs, followed by Councilman Henderson.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Ordered. Thank you. Then we'll jump down to I, Madam Clerk.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 1 final for Tri-State Roofing Contractors, Inc. of Chattanooga, Tennessee, relative to contract number W17012-201, replacement of roofing system for maintenance building at MBWWTP for a decreased amount of $147.92 for a revised contract amount of $113,279, and to release a contingency amount of $11,300.
Councilman Mitchell.
Move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. Thank you. Jay, please.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number W16017-201 to J. Cumbie Construction, Inc. of Cookeville, Tennessee, solids process optimization implementation phase 2, thickener upgrades, a consent decree project, and the amount of $4,326,900 with a contingency amount of $400,000 for an amount not to exceed $4,726,900, subject to SRF loan approval.
Councilman Henderson.
Move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Kay, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with Club Profit Systems relative to RFP 163109 golf course software to provide city golf courses with a new point of sale and tee time reservation system annually for an amount not to exceed $13,000, plus a one-time travel training and setup expense for an amount up to $1,500, for a total amount of $14,500.
Councilman Gilbert.
Move to approve.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Madam Clerk, L, please.
A resolution authorizing the award of contract number Y17019-201 to Tri-State Roofing Contractors of Chattanooga, Tennessee, replacement roofing system for Shepherd YFT Center Building, and the amount of $155,069 with a contingency amount of $16,000 for an amount not to exceed $171,069.
Councilwoman Burrs, followed by Councilman Gilbert.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you. M, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with the Electric Power Board, EPB, for sales order number 1180300178 for the purpose to provide a new service to the new Avondale YFT Center by extending the 12.47 kV power lines in order to serve the required 277-480V service relative to agreement number Y1500801 in the amount of $30,659.73.
Councilman Byrd. Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you. N, please.
A resolution authorizing the approval of change order number 2 final for Volker Inc. relative to contract number W120300101 Highland Park Sewer Rehabilitation, a consent decree project for an increased amount of $3,690 for the revised contract amount of $619,832.
Councilwoman Coonrod, followed by Councilman Byrd. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. O, please.
A resolution authorizing the administrator for the Department of Public Works to enter into an agreement with AMAC Foster Wheeler Environment and Infrastructure, Inc. for professional services relative to contract number S12004-102 WPA Ditch Program Phase 2 for a total amount not to exceed $368,560.
Councilman Mitchell.
Move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed is nay. So ordered. P, please.
A resolution authorizing payment for services incurred by utilizing the Tennessee on-call system in the amount of $34,578.
Councilman Henderson.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Opposed is nay. So ordered. Madam Clerk, let's move back to item 5A, please. Councilman Henderson.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga.
Hold on, Madam Clerk. Have you got the correct version now, Phil?
Is that the language of the ordinance, or is that what we need to read into the record?
The caption needs to the ordinance referencing single detached only to this property.
Okay, so if we've already read this into the record, so if we just want to confirm that the conditions that you read are what was passed last week, please.
Yes. Go ahead, read it.
Let's read them, just because it wasn't listed on here originally.
An ordinance to amend Chattanooga City Code, Part 2, Chapter 38, zoning ordinance, so as to rezone the property located in the 500 block of May Street, more particularly described herein from R1 residential zone to ERA2, subject to certain conditions, specifically single-family detached only.
Is that correct, Councilman?
That is correct. Yes. So I move approval.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed is nay. So ordered. Thank you. Thank you, Phil. Thanks, Wade. All right. That ends part of our agenda and takes us to purchases for the evening. And Mr. Sammons?
Good evening, members of council. We have a few items for purchases for your consideration. 6 items listed under Public Works. The first being for the Waste Resource Division, a new blanket contract for PVC pipe and fitting being awarded to Piping Supply Company and Consolidated Pipe and Supply Company, and the total estimated annual amount of $125,000. The next item is a new blanket contract for bucket truck bodies and chassis, and this is under the Fleet Management Division, being awarded to Lee Smith Incorporated, an estimated annual amount of $400,000. The next item, blanket contract renewal for emergency vehicle lighting equipment, also from the Fleet Management Division, being awarded to On Duty Depot Incorporated and Lee Smith Incorporated for a total estimated annual amount of $250,000. The next item for Facilities Management Division, the blanket contract renewal for Card Access 3000 support services and hardware, being awarded to Gallagher and Associates Incorporated for an estimated annual amount of $90,000. Next item, also for Facilities Management Division, a blanket contract renewal for plumbing services citywide, awarded to Keith Plumbing and Heating Company Incorporated and Chase Services LLC for a total estimated annual amount of $800,000. Next, for Facility Management Division, there's another blanket contract renewal for paper goods. This is also a citywide contract, being awarded to AVM Enterprises Incorporated and American Paper and Twine Company for a total estimated annual amount of $150,000. And last, we have for Youth and Family Development, a blanket contract renewal for Summer Meals Program, being awarded to the YMCA of Metropolitan Chattanooga in an estimated annual amount of $226,000. We also have one emergency purchase, and it's emergency structural engineering services for a city-owned building located at 1715 East Main Street in an amount of $6,100, and is being awarded to Bennett and Pless Incorporated.
Mr. Holland, did we find out any further information on that item?
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the Bennett and Pless was contacted last week. They've just begun their analysis. I'll be happy to update the council once we get some information.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thanks.
I will entertain a motion on the other purchase items. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question about the blanket contract for the summer meals. Last year, there were several complaints about the food that the recreation centers were receiving. The kids were complaining they were throwing away the food that they were sending. So did those issues get addressed before we just renewed the contract with this company?
Ariel. Who can?
Hey, thanks for that question. Yes, so we've been in conversations with the YMCA, the vendor, to make sure that we are editing the meals and adding more of the foods that the kids love and transitioning out some of the foods that were not so loved by the kids. So yes, we've made those changes, and we're moving forward with more food that will be eaten more. So thanks for the question.
So who, do we know who the other company, what was the name of the other organization that bid it?
Councilwoman Coonrod, I don't have that information in this packet. There were a total of 3 bids that were received, but I will get that information for you. I don't have that available at the moment.
Mr. Sammons, I'm sorry, Councilwoman, just real quick. Were there 3 bids requested or were there 3 bids returned? Because this says 1 bid returned.
There were, I'm sorry, thank you for the correction. There was 3 bids that were requested, and only 1 was returned of the 3.
So the one was the YMCA?
Yes.
Or was it another one and we just decided to renew with them?
No, the one that was received was from the YMCA.
Okay. Well, my concern is with our process. I just want to make sure that I'm understanding and reading exactly what it's saying. Because previously, and I'm bringing it up again, is that we've had similar situations, and because of the fact that they've had several complaints against them, that we weren't pleased, that we decided to go with different organizations. Now this company, clearly we've had some disappointing things, there were several complaints, yet we still choose to go back into negotiations with them.
With the why and the kinds of food, is that
Right.
what you're speaking to?
Right.
So what I can say about it is that Head Start will start using the Y as a vendor come fall, because they are meeting all the national guidelines. They're meeting all of the health standards. So my understanding, and this was before my time, and so someone else might speak more to what happened previously, is that we weren't actually meeting all the guidelines that we needed to in the regularity that we needed to. So the Y is really capable of making all of those, hitting all of those health marks. And this has been something that's been a challenge for national food programs across the country, is that as the food guidelines have changed, and so they're including healthier foods, whole grains, those kinds of things, and so kids' palates haven't quite caught up. So we're really working to adjust the kids' palates. We've talked with the YFD staff about the staff really encouraging the kids and not saying like, oh, I know you don't like that food. And not that they were, but just trying to use that healthy adult guidance to really make sure that the kids are understanding the importance of healthy food choices. So some of it is not the why, it's just that we have increased health guidelines from the feds that are telling us what we can and can't serve.
Right, I understand that. So
yeah.
basically, the YMCA you're saying is that they're the only organization that meeting those federal guidelines. Have we had any other vendor that can meet those guidelines?
I wouldn't be able to, I was not part of the RFP review process, so I don't.
We just have to get that information from the committee of those that were received. I'm not exactly sure to be able to answer that with a complete dialogue as to if they've checked with other vendors, but we can check with the purchasing department to get that information and provide it for you.
I would appreciate that. I mean, my concern is that we get back into this same pickle every time when we're asking for information. This organization was addressed with the concerns that, months ago back in the summer. And then now we get here and it's like, well, we're gonna go with them again, but yet we didn't get a follow-up on the questions and the concerns that we had in regards to the YMCA providing summer meals for the kids.
You didn't receive follow-up from the responses from those questions?
Until now, when she just addressed it, but previously I haven't, unless I missed that email, but I haven't.
Because usually, when there are problems with a vendor, we have those discussions, especially during that process, to address that concern and to make sure that those issues that have been brought up are being addressed, and knowing that those things will be reviewed on a continuous basis should that particular vendor be the selected vendor to work with for the next year. That's part of the process that we're trying to do more review on a consistent basis. And when those complaints are coming in, the purchasing department is immediately trying to now get with those vendors to address those concerns on the front end and not wait until the end of a contract season.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Councilman Gilbert?
I'm just curious. Is YMCA actually performing the duties of preparing this, or are they subbing it out to another company? Do you know?
Yeah, they do all the preparation.
So we know?
They do all the preparation.
All
Yeah.
the preparation of it
All of it.
at this location?
What was the location?
301 West
301 West 6th Street.
I can't speak to that. They have it. It's an in-house program. They don't sub it out. I can't speak to that location in particular, but I could look into that if you want.
Can you find out for me?
Yeah, absolutely.
I appreciate it.
For sure.
Ms. Ford, real quick.
Yes, sir.
So just to reiterate a little bit from my colleague, Councilwoman Coonrod, I know some of the issues that we ran into did have to do with meal choice, but I'm also very familiar in situations where it was just bad.
Okay.
The food was bad when it was delivered. Couldn't
As-
be served as in rotten.
As
It
in
was
rotten.
bad.
Okay.
Still frozen.
So my concern is I have no problem using a vendor that has corrected problems that may have been had in the past, but I would like to make sure that it's reiterated to this vendor that this cannot ever happen again for our kids this summer.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So noted. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I see no more lights. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Approved.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed is nay. Thank you very much. Moving on to other business. Is there anyone on the council who has other business? Councilman Byrd.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to definitely announce that this Friday at the new location of M&M Factories on the corner of Main and Holtzclaw, there will be a carnival that is free for everyone to come to. It starts at 5 and ends at 7. And so Friday, if you're not doing anything, come enjoy some good times for the whole family and meet a new nice business that is coming into our community. So the next thing, I definitely would like to thank the Troop 43. Thank you guys for coming to hang out with us today. I hope you enjoyed yourself and learned a little something or inspired to be a councilman one day in the future. So thank you guys for coming to join us, all right? All right.
Councilman, real quick, the fair that you announced, is that also a job?
Right. The biggest part is that this company is definitely bringing 110 jobs to the city of Chattanooga. So once you get there, it will be people there for you to talk to, and you can engage about filling out job applications, and you can do it right there on the site and not have to go through temp services as well. So this will be a great opportunity for people who are also looking for employment. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Oglesby.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This past Saturday in Alton Park, we had our first annual festival and cleanup, and it was a phenomenal event. The event actually started about 3 weeks ago when EPB came out there and changed all the lights out on Fagan Street, which is one of our challenge streets in that particular community. And everybody rallied around together and sweep that block, and it looks great. It was a total team effort by a lot of hardworking people, and I want to acknowledge some of them right here because they surely deserved it. And I'm going to start with our city departments. We had the police there who brought their cadets, and the cadets are just walking down the street, sweeping, but most importantly, they were interacting with the residents. So it was a total experience on positive things happening between our police and that particular community. We had the fire department there that was changing out smoke alarms and once again interacting with the residents and building relationships. We had Public Works that was out there picking up debris. They were cutting grass. They were just doing an excellent job. Transportation, who was there, they blocked off the streets and they made sure that everything was safe to have this festival. We had the Department of Economic and Community Development there. We had the administration, and I want to send out a special shout out to Amy Laudermill. She did a phenomenal job in helping with the coordination of it. We could not have done it without her. We had some superstars from Economic and Community Development. We had Karen Clay, who was also coordinator, but we had the most phenomenal field general that took this event that started out as just cleaning Fagan Street And under his leadership, he just turned it into a festival where we wound up at the Southside Community Park. And that was Jermaine Freeman, who was part of it also, but it was also Jonathan Butler. He was the field general that took this vision and just let it grow. And it just goes to show you what happens when we coordinate activities with our city departments and the great employees that they have within it. The evening culminated with an event at the Southside Community Park, which we partnered with Jazzanuga. And there was food, there was dancing, there was entertainment. It was just a lively day. And for some miraculous reason, the weather was fantastic. So I'm gonna have to thank God for that one, because he deserved all the glory for that, because it was like one of the few times that month we actually had a really, really good weather Saturday. So, you know, in putting it all in perspective, it just goes to show you when everybody teams up, when neighbors come together to help neighbors, when people start talking together, and that's what happened when you start talking about revitalization of neighborhoods. And I guarantee you, when you go down Fagan Street now, it's brighter, it's cleaner, and you see people interacting. And that's the start of what I call a great society. So I'm so excited, and we're looking forward to the next one. That's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, sir. Councilman Gilbert.
Yes, last night with planning RPA, we had a Area 3 plan. I think this is the second meeting that we had, and it's going pretty good. We're going to have more meetings, and we're going to try to get the word out to all the communities in these areas to come and express what you want to see in your area. What do you want to see development-wise? What do you want to see for as housing and things of that nature? So we will be telling you a date and time of the next meeting. Appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. Councilwoman Coonrod.
Thank you, Chair. I said I was going to be nice to you now. I just want to give a shout out to the Chattanooga Elite 15U Navy basketball team. They traveled to South Carolina this weekend and they won. So the Chattanooga Elite under AAU, we fund them every year. So I'm excited about that. So far they 5-0, meaning that they have not lost a game so far. And it was an exposure tournament for grades 9th through 11th. So great job.
Thank you, ma'am. Councilman Gilbert, back to you.
Yeah, I forgot to mention, this past Saturday, we are losing a great man. He's going on to another city, but Pastor Ware of New Monumental is leaving us. We had a good ceremony, and I was really shocked that well, I'm not shocked, but he's a great man, but he got the Presidential Volunteer Award, him and his wife, and also our very own, the 5th District, Mr. Harris, Israel Harris, also received an award too. So it was a wonderful event, a nice ceremony for us, sending him out to Atlanta.
Sorry about that.
I know. He did a lot for our babies, for us Woodmore. He just did a whole lot. He's the type of pastor that didn't want to be in the spotlight, but he was behind the scenes doing a lot for these kids. Every time you ask him, he was there for them, especially when the time when Woodmore had the tragedy of the kids. He opened up his doors for the church for people to come in and grieve. So I will definitely miss him.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hinton.
It's another good Omega man. Real quick, I wanted to just make an announcement about short-term vacation rentals. I think a few weeks ago we mentioned that we might have our first round of hearings on April 24th. We're actually setting the date for the first short-term vacation rental hearings on May 8th. We hear 4 properties that evening. We'll continue to have them in the weeks that follow until we catch up with the applicants. Just for information purposes, we're going to notify the applicant of the hearing date. We'll also notify those that objected to the application. We'll notify the neighborhood association, and those council members who represent that particular district or where the property is located. You should have received some information from Nicole or Karen this afternoon. Thanks.
Mr. Attorney, will those be heard in ECD committee?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. They will be heard in ECD committee meeting next week at 3 o'clock. It just will be an overview, but the actual hearing itself will take place on May 8th at the 6 o'clock meeting My understanding in speaking with the council, it's the same dignity as a zoning case, so you'll have 9 minutes to present your case as well as 9 minutes for opposition.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk, did you get that? We want to make sure to schedule that ECD meeting. Okay, great. Thank you. All right, seeing no other lights, we'll move on to committee reports. Councilwoman Burrs. Councilman Byrd?
Yes, sir. We had a wonderful economic and community development meeting today. We discussed, had a discussion on HUD required presentation regarding funding recommendations for CDBG, Community Development Block Grants, and ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant distribution. So it was wonderful. Got a lot of information from it.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilwoman Coonrod. Careful. Councilman Gilbert. Councilman Anderson. Councilman Ledford.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A Planning and Zoning Committee meeting immediately following our agenda session on May 1st. Thank you.
All right. Councilman Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Public Works and Transportation Committee meeting next week also.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Oglesby.
No report, sir.
All right. Moving on. We've now reached the point in our agenda where we recognize persons wishing to address the council on non-agenda items. Is there anybody that would like to address the council? We have at least one. Mr. Attorney, would you please read the rules?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If you're interested in addressing the council, you have 5 minutes unless the council provides for additional time. You can only address the council on matters that are within its jurisdiction. Again, these are non-agenda items. You cannot use any obscene or vulgar language. You can't personally attack or personally denigrate others. With that being said, please approach the microphone, sir.
Thank you. Members of the council, my name is Robert Stone. I am the Major Account Executive and Municipal Manager for Republic Services. My current permanent residence is 2734 Iris Way in the Villages, Florida, and I'll explain that. I've lived in the Chattanooga area since 1981. I've been employed with Republic Services, a recycling and waste disposal company, for 30 plus years. On June 30th of this year, I will officially retire. The purpose of my comments are as follows. During my tenure, my company has met with various public works directors, managers, mayors, etc. It has always been our desire to provide the recycling and waste collection service for the city of Chattanooga, or at least to get it put out to open market bid and leave the government's responsibility for governing people. In some areas that we service, we have to compete against municipalities who provide residential and commercial services for a fee and utilize taxpayers' dollars to budget that service. We are a for-profit company that does not have the luxury of a tax base, grants, government discounts on purchasing equipment, and we must provide quality service that is both efficient and profitable. Two of our pillars are responsible and reliable. Most recently, we bid on the front load service for the city of Chattanooga, bid number 305007. This request for quote was let out to bid with a bid opening of January the 31st. The request for quote was opened and prices were read aloud. Republic Services were the lowest price bid at that time. On February the 9th, I was advised that the request for quote, or RFQ, would be rebid and that the due date would be February the 16th. Due to insufficient quantities on the bid. Original bid clearly states on the front page, now this is the City of Chattanooga bid, states quantities are estimates only. The City of Chattanooga shall guarantee no minimum or maximum amount of purchased during the lifetime of the contract. Even though the quantities changed on the second bid, the list, locations, and service levels stayed the same and were most sufficient to give a rough estimate on the quantity of the work for the first bid. In addition, it was a unit price bid, which could be more or less locations and containers. When the work had been bid out 5 years ago, Republic Service did not have the work. It did not mention in that bid that the containers must be new and unused. In the RFQ for 2018, it states equipment must be new and unused. In the past, this usually indicates that the bidding companies or company other than the incumbent has encouraged this to be put in the bid since they would have to purchase new equipment anyway. Since Republic was the incumbent and the equipment was in better than average condition, we were able to offer an approximately $50,000 savings to the city of Chattanooga by utilizing the equipment that was in place. As stated in the RFQ, the contractor is responsible to see that the equipment is maintained and if worn or damaged, to be replaced. My next to last point is there were over 26 locations that were not listed as locations that were currently being serviced by the city, for the city. In addition, there were some that were listed, such as Summit Head Start, which has been closed for at least 5 years. The city is currently being charged for the dumpster that is there, and it is empty. Also, Memorial Auditorium and the Zoo, Frost Stadium, and City Hall Annex, they all either handle their own garbage service or do not have a location for a dumpster. They were also listed on the bid. And the ones such as the Zoo, Stadium, City Hall, they more than likely the city will be billed for those since they were part of the bid. My final point is the bidding process has been a fiasco from the beginning. The individual department heads might be better suited to seek services on the open market rather than to leave it to city government to provide an inadequate bidding process such as this. Any questions?
Councilman Gilbert, is that your light?
Yes, I'm hearing what you're saying, and I'm kind of upset to a certain degree that you're saying that you could have saved us $50,000 by you having repainted used dumpsters, correct?
Correct.
And currently, the new company is supposed to provide new dumpsters, correct?
Supposed to have, yes.
But my understanding that the dumpsters they provided are not new. Some of them rusted out, got paint missing. And see, I have issues with that because we could have saved $50,000. I'm sick and tired of companies coming in here, making these bids, and not having the equipment to do the job. We need to check behind these companies when they say we're going to do X. This is about the third time that a company has made a bid where we did not check behind them, and they start doing what they want to do until somebody questions them, then all of a sudden they start doing the right thing. So I'm just really kind of have got concerns about this. I had concerns before this vote. I think I still got concerns now that we're not checking good enough. And I don't think it's purchasing situation. I think purchasers actually do the bid, but whoever gave them the specs need to follow up and find out if these people are doing their job. Because we spending out too much money doing a half job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Henderson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This, I think, question is more for Justin, just for refreshing my mind. Justin, I seem like I remember asking and checking in to this about this contract. It's my understanding it's the same wording or same bid process, qualifications, recommendations as we've had in the past 2 or 3 years, correct?
That's my understanding also.
It's,
talking to
yeah,
staff.
that's what I thought as well. So it's in fact, it's the same wording, and I think that this company got the contract for the previous year.
That's what I understand.
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Justin.
All right. Councilman Gilbert?
Hey, Justin, I have one more question. Why did we put new on these dumpsters on this bid versus the last time we bid this out? Why the definition of new was on there instead of the last time we bid it out?
So I believe that the specs are similar to the last time that we sent it out, and I can restaff that and get your response to ensure that that's accurate.
Yeah, the wording on there, I read the contract, it says new,
Yes,
that
sir.
knocked out this company's out, and the problem I have is they ain't sending us no new dumpsters.
Yeah, let me staff that, and I'll be happy to come back to the council with a response.
Okay.
Of what the other company's done.
All right.
All right. Is there anybody else that would like to address the council this evening? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Move adjourned.
We are adjourned.